Alright, so today we're going to be siding that gable up there. Just up there, so this will be a nice, simple video. Alright, so our first order of business is going to be getting our counter flashing on. And I believe I made the top leg of the counter flashing pretty consistent, so I'm going to be able to snap a line. In the past, I've just felt for the corner and tried to install it straight, and I don't think that's the best way to do it. You still end up with whips here and there. So now I like to snap a line and try to make the top leg of this flashing consistent across. So what I'm going to do is actually find a happy medium, and actually I'll go with the bigger measurement, because then I'll be able to leave one hanging down a little bit if I need to, and I won't cover up my line. So it looks like I got 3 1/16, 3 1/16. Those are all 3 1/16. 3 1/16. Yeah, I actually built them right on the mark. Okay, so I'm still going to mark it a little higher. That way, like I said, I'm not going to cover up my line with the piece. So I had 3 1/16, and this is going to plane in a little higher than if I butt my tape against there. It's actually going to be up here because of the angle. So if I butt against that and then I go up maybe 3 3/8 or 3 1/4, somewhere in there, that'll get me a pretty good idea of where I'm going. So 3 1/16, yeah, I'll go 3 3/8. Again, I angle my nail backwards that way because that's the direction that I'm pulling my chalk line, and it'll slide tight against the wall, not away. Other thing to pay attention to is where their top row is contacting. A lot of times their ice and water isn't tight into the corner, and you can see that their shingle cut is pretty, varies quite a bit. So you're gonna want to go with a happy medium. Try to match what kind of shingle you did on the other side. So we had 3 3/8, and this shingle looks like is about the same as one we measured from on the other side. And some people would say, "Oh, level across," but what good is it going to do to level across if this thing isn't built level? It's just going to look like garbage. We're better off starting where it's going to look nice, and then if we need to, we can straighten it up as we go, and we can easily make up an 1/8 inch on a course, and by the time we hit the bottom of the window, we could make up an inch easy. Another thing is, you probably see I got a blue line on the roof right there, and that's why you don't want to use red chalk, because if you look on the back of the red chalk bottle, it says there is no known way to remove red chalk, and that blue line will just wash away eventually. So this is going to go underneath where the soffit's going to go, this counter flashing, and I actually hemmed the bottom edge there, and then I built my hem so that it came up the back a little bit. That way it gave it a little bit more integrity, because this bottom we're going to leave about 2 inches showing of this right here, because you're supposed to be 2 inches above any roof with where you're starting your Hardie. And it looks like I overbent this a little bit, so I'm gonna have to flatten it out. And the way to do that is you could either go put it in your brake, or you can just put it against the wall and gently work that angle back. Trying really hard not to put a crease in it. We got a little closer, but I got to go a little more. But I'll pause it for when I got that done. Okay, I got it bent to the angle that I want. And now I'm gonna tuck this thing underneath this. I just need to trim this a little bit. And I'll make sure it goes under there by a good margin. Now I'm kind of feeling where the corner is there, and also sighting down this bottom edge and making sure that bottom edge stays pretty tight to the roof. And it looks like if we go 1/8 inch down from the line, it'll be pretty good. Now I'm going to leave my nails up high, so they're not showing below the siding. And it's going to continue that all the way down, and I'll be back. So right here, the roofer really rounded his shingle, and that's making it really difficult to get this to sit down to the roof. Unfortunately, there's not a lot I can do. I mean, I would have to almost build this thing flat in order to turn that corner. And, you know, this is where you're kind of at the mercy of somebody in another profession. And it's really difficult to sometimes get your work to look as neat as you want it to. What I'm aiming for is when you're on the ground looking up at this, and looking up, you don't see a gap underneath there. And I'm gonna probably sneak my first course of siding down a little, so that maybe you have 1.25 inches of reveal here, 1.5 inches of reveal, and that's gonna snug it a little bit tighter to the wall. If I could nail in this, then I could have it completely tight. But I will try to flatten that out some more and get it a little bit closer. So I pulled that off and I got it flattened out a bit more. And now even on small details like this flashing, I like to make my laps facing away from high traffic areas. So there's a driveway coming up, so I want my lap to go that way. And you can probably see I cut a little V in that last one. And I've seen people do this before, and I thought it looked pretty nice. So all I'm doing is getting this one to go underneath that one and on top of it. Guess I didn't really need the V, but there it is. It holds it a little bit tighter. Yeah, and it's a way to not have to have both layers go over both layers of this, so it keeps this one a little tighter. And yeah, that's out. Got that on there. Not gonna lie, I did struggle quite a bit to get it to look halfway decent, and unfortunately that's about the best I'm gonna be able to do. Now it's just time to tape the top, and again, ideally it'd be ice and water down to there. Tape the top of the ice and water, not taping the edge to the ice and water, but this will be sufficient. It is like more of a last line of defense. The siding itself is watertight, so I'm not too concerned about it. So we got that on, and now it's just time to tape the top. And we're going to leave the tape up so we know it's not going to show below the flashing, or below the siding, sorry. A good practice here is to pull out a good section of it and just make sure you're heading in a straight line, and then stick it just like that. If you try to pull out a little bit at a time, you're more likely to make wrinkles because you'll be changing the direction. All right, so my starter pieces there, right here, I cut them out 1 1/16 inches. So I'm gonna mark up to leave 1 1/4 inches below. It's just gonna look a bit nicer, and I think it'll be pretty good. So we're gonna go 1 1/16 inches plus 1 1/4 inches. So that'd be 2 5/16. And while we're there, we can go the 1 1/4 inches plus 7 1/4 inches, which would be 8 1/2 inches, and that'll be our first row of siding, because that's 7 1/4 inches total. So we'll have 1 1/4 inches down there. So generally I like to go a little bit higher with my starter piece than my bottom of my siding, which is what I will do. I'll actually cheat that starter up a little, so the starter doesn't show below the bottom of the siding. So I actually am going to change my mind here on the fly and go, although the same height with the starter, that 2 3/16, and then I'm actually going to go a little bit lower with the siding. I'll go 1 inch above this corner, which means that I'll be marking at 8 1/4. So right there, 8 1/4. It's hard to see that line because it's on the ice and water. Yep. I'll just have to remember to change that side. So our siding will be 1/4 inch below that starter piece. Okay, so probably notice I'm holding a piece of F channel now, and I'm going to want to put this F channel on before I put my starter strip on and before I put my siding on, because it's going to overlap this F channel a little bit. And mainly right here I'm just concerned about making this bottom leg look good. The top one is hidden, so I'm trying to match the angle of this flashing there, and keeping in mind that the siding's starting up 1 inch, so I want to knife off that nail fin for at least an inch on the bottom, because otherwise it's going to show. This knife blade is toast. Usually I just make one score and we're good, but I gotta change that thing out. Alright, we'll see how I did. Just kind of guessed, and if I guessed wrong I can just trim it. But no, that's looking pretty good. So I just use these blocks to get it started there. And you could chalk a line for this bottom leg here. Get you a little straighter line coming down. But a lot of times this is where the dimensions actually changes on the nail fin. So I don't usually bother, and it turns out pretty straight with just putting it against their blocks usually. Unless you have a re-side, then you might have a little bit more difficulty. So you might want to chalk a line for it. I got both those pieces of F-channel on, and now I'm going to put on my starter piece. And it's probably a good idea to drill out holes and use the ring shank nails, but I think with plenty of these little guys should hold up just fine. So I'm gonna do this all the way down. And I'm gonna leave little 1/4 inch gaps in between all these pieces. James Hardie does call for you to gap these. Both sides of this is primed, all the ends are primed. And yeah, so I'm just gonna put a little gap there, go right on that line. And the other thing this is doing, besides kicking out my siding on the bottom like it's supposed to be, is it's also kind of helping to flatten out this flashing there. So I'm going to do that all the way down, and I'll be back. Okay, now I'm going to check and just make sure that I'm not going to poke below with my starter piece. You can see I have 7 inches there, 7 inches there, 7 inches there. So my siding is 7 1/4 tall, so it will go below that starter by 1/4 inch. And you know, it's just one thing to do, is just double check and make sure that you're not going to be having your starter piece stick below your siding, because that's just not going to look good. Okay, so now I'm going to get my first pieces going here, and this is a truss roof right here, so we're 2 foot on center for layout. So except for underneath this window, because the way they built the window is probably something like this in the truss. The truss goes like that, and then the 2x4s are on the flat, and then all they do is header off with with a 2x on the flat, another 2x on the flat. There's the bottom cord, and so they actually shift their layout to make it work, and then I think they just put one in the middle. So you don't end up with 2 foot underneath windows a lot of times. And you can see we're at 21 and then like 18 or something. So it changes right here. I think it does land on an 8 though. So an 8 foot piece of plywood works. Actually, never mind. Looking at this right here, we're at 88. So they had to cut their sheet down to make it work. So this definitely, having the window here, changed their layout. So we just want to keep that in mind. I'll probably actually measure each starter piece individually, and you can do a 2 foot step with your starters in between rows, but I go 4, 4, 4, and then when I come back with my next full piece, I'll go in between. So it kind of like breaks things up, and I think it looks pretty good. And you'll see what I mean in a second here. But I'll get the first measurement, and let's see. I'm just going to hook this. And what we're doing here is, after the siding's on, we're just going to put a piece of 1x4 over top of that end. So it's going to cover this whole end there, 3.5 inches to the end. So we got a lot of room to play with right here, and the cut doesn't have to be very nice. Ideally, you would pad out your 1x4 with maybe a piece of strapping, and then tuck the siding underneath it. But for this case, we're going to go just long with the Hardie and then on top with a 1x4. So right there, we're about an inch away from the F channel, and that'll be okay. And we have a lot of wiggle room on these studs because they're on the flat. You got 3.5 inches. So we're gonna start actually probably right in the middle here. And I'm just gonna draw a line down so I know where to measure to. And 130.5 should work just fine. 130.5. And then we're gonna come back. It's not really 4 feet, it's actually 2 studs. And I'm going about 1.25 inches below that line to get my measurement here. And it looks like, did I say 1/4 inch? I mean 1.25 inches. Looks like about 83.5 will work pretty good for this one. Now just thinking of it, we're not going to land on a stud with the next piece because they threw the whole layout off. See, we're going to land over there with a 12-footer. And I could cut a 12-footer down to make it land on a stud on the end, or I can just land it off a stud. And I think I'm just going to land it off a stud because it's just going to look nicer to have it a full piece, and in the field you have your factory ends hitting together that are factory primed. And they do say that if framing isn't available, and it's generally not in this circumstance, but they say if framing's not available, you can fasten directly to 7/16 OSB. And I think that's in the case where you have like insulated siding where you're not going to have a nail long enough, or insulated plywood, sorry. Insulated plywood where you don't have a nail long enough to reach the studs. I'm not really certain what the nail requirements are when fastening only to 7/16 OSB. I'm pretty sure I know what they are, but that's something you could look up. They briefly mention it in their install instructions. And again, everything depends on where you live and your local codes too, because every place is different. 130.5. So we're leaving our factory end over there. And there's only one way you can put this stuff. This looks like it's probably a 10 pitch. Let's see. Not that it's too critical, but we'll check it just the same. And right there. Oh no, it's a 12 pitch. Yeah, interesting. Looking up there, it didn't look like it was square. Okay, so now I'm going to mark this out. And then I have my snippers here. Showed these in the first video I did here. And if you have a more exposed cut, you're going to want to cut from the back side. But this cut is hidden, so all those little scuff marks are covered up. And really you want to wear gloves when you're installing this stuff because it will eat your hands alive. So the first two pieces I snap lines for, and then after that I can use my gauges. And let's get this thing on there. And again, you can't let this stuff bend. It destroys it if you let it bend. Just keep an eye on over there, making sure I'm on the stud. And right there. And right there you can see the nail line. You want to make sure you're nailing right on that. And this stuff will flex up and down actually. It's got a little bit of flexibility, so you want to make sure you're pulling it up or pushing it down to your line. And you can go every 24. Sometimes I'll fill in the middle. I don't think more nails is necessarily a bad thing, so. Let's see. Did I bring my bear skin up here? I thought I did. You want these nails just snug or just flush. They're very particular about that. I didn't bring up my flashing. So here's my flashing. It's like a big post-it note. That goes right in there, centered. And they say go a 1/4 inch up from the bottom of the piece and put it nice and straight. For some reason, I seem to always angle mine a little bit, but it's fine as long as it's not poking below the siding. All right, so now I just got to measure the ender in here. Right there, and about 133 should be okay. And this side of my square is a 45, in case you didn't know that. And again, it works better if you have a drill, not an impact drill. Probably cuts a little faster, might cut a little cleaner. But I only have one drill, so I didn't want to monopolize it on the shears. And now you want to butt the ends together. You want to make sure those butt ends stay nice and tight together. So I'm pushing to the left, and there I can nail that stud. And paying attention to whether or not it's opening up on the bottom or top. And sometimes if it's opening up a lot, then I'll sneak it down a little bit. But generally I want to let it lay because their cuts might not be perfectly square. And I've ran into where it was opening up and it was their cut that wasn't square on the end. So, but if you're seeing that get thrown way off, then there's a chance that maybe that piece over there is pitching down, or this one's pitching down, or down that way. So if you notice your seams opening up, just double check that you're heading in a straight line. And it looks like I might have cut this a little too long, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim it in place. It's not the end of the world to have it a little too long. There we go. So yeah, you probably noticed that I didn't paint the end there, and the reason why is it's underneath an eave, and it's also going to be covered by a 1x4, so I think we'll be okay. So now I have the first piece on right here, and you know the overall length, width of the piece is 7 1/4, but I'm going up one more piece, so I'm going 6 inches up because that's our reveal. So I'm going to mark 6 inches there, and then that'll drop this 7 1/4 piece down to here, and we'll have 1 1/4 inch of coverage on that piece. And that's why they have the nail line right there. If you nail below that nail line by any more than 1/8 inch, your nails start to show up. So that's one thing to be aware of, because that nail line is right at 1 inch, and if you account for the width of your nail head, if you're too far down, that nail will show underneath the next piece of siding. So you want to be just spot on that. nail line. You don't want to go up, you don't want to go down. It'll be right there. And there is a tool that somebody sells that does attach to a nail gun to hold you exactly at that inch down from the top. All right, so we got that 83-inch one on, and now we're gonna put on a full here. And again, we're gonna butt it in tight. Careful not to pinch your flashing in there. And you have a couple nails there, and once you get a couple in, it's not going to go anywhere. And you can check your seam, and that's looking okay. Now this is something that I've run into where you have just different profiles on the top, and I don't know why it's like that, but it actually makes the pieces slightly different heights. You can see I have my bottom lined up right there, and this one is slightly shorter than that one, and I don't know why that's the case, but it is something to keep in mind when you're trying to start off the top. Once I have these on now, I'll be off to the races with my gecko gauges here. But I think what's happening is it's actually changing the angle of the siding, so I'm kind of tipping down a little bit. It is opening up that seam a tiny bit, but it's within, I think, a reasonable tolerance. So I'm gonna let it go. Because I've seen plenty like that just straight out of the box. I don't know if it's even that the siding's tipping at all. I think it's probably most likely that the ends are slightly out of square, and you're talking probably a 64th on each piece, and it's going to look really good still from the ground. So we're basically holding a magnifying glass to this because we're right up against it. There's that line. As I like to say, we're off to the races now, and these gauges have a little wedge shape with a little tab there, and that'll slip right behind the siding, just like that. And sometimes you have to kind of work your fingers in there and pull it out a little bit, and then you want to just snug it up. And you do want to keep an eye on whether or not you're heading straight still. It can end up going off a little, so you need to be careful. And these are pretty heavy pieces, so I like to do 3 gauges just to make sure that it's holding it. And you got to come in for a soft landing. Right there, I kind of came in a little hard. And if you come in a little hard, it can push the piece, it can push those gauges down, so you want to keep an eye on that. So you want to gently set it down, and then line up these ends here. And if you leave these too long, like for a few hours, or maybe depending on, your climate or whatever, it'll actually peel off the paint. So you want to pull those gauges off relatively quickly, because it's got some rubber right there and that'll actually stick to the paint. But yeah, it doesn't have to be like right away. It just needs to be within a few hours. Yeah, let's see. And if you get a nail that's out a little bit too much, like this one, just give it a little bump so it's in snug. And if you're doing siding over like steel studs, they say not to hit it again, so I guess you get one shot with steel studs, because I think it bounces off, it bounces back out. And right there, that piece is a little bit scuffed, you might have noticed. And generally, you're able to kind of work those out with an eraser if you get some little scuffs on it. Okay, so nailing this Hardie, here's what they're looking for. They want the back of the head of your nail to be snug against the siding. This is an exaggerated view. Or flush with the siding. So those are the two approved methods of nailing it. And not approved is angling your nail, countersinking it, or leaving space behind the head. So it's very specific that it's either snug with no airspace behind it, or flush. And I'll try to get you a close-up view there. You can see that nail is just flush. And then over here, this one is just snug. And that's how I've been doing it on this whole house. So that's what you gotta do. And I think I'll actually put the approved nail guns and nails in this video, this short little video. Okay, now moving on to my starters. You can see when you run a 4-foot stagger, you run out your pieces pretty quick. So now I gotta start over, and I can either go here probably or over here. I don't know if it'll be long enough to reach. Clear over here. Yeah, it'll be long enough. So yeah, I think that'll look okay if I just run it over to here. And again, I'm just going about 1.25 inches down and measuring to there, 136.5. So now we have the 4-foot pattern, and now we're going 2 foot off of that. So if I go 4 foot back, or skip a stud rather, then I'll be back here, and then the next one I'll be back here. So we'll have the 4-foot stair pattern again, and it'll give a good random look. I worked it up to almost the window now, and you can see just how random my joints are. I got a stair pattern there, and then this one down here doesn't line up. So now it's time to start over again. I'm going to put another seam right here. There's no other real place to put it. I mean, you're separated by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, so I think we did pretty good. Now, what I'm looking for is how it's lining up with the bottom of the window. And since this is up in a gable, like nothing attached to it, I could like chalk lines and tip things around a little bit to make it line up a little better. But right here, we have 16 and 9/16, and we're at 16 and 9/16. So we know that it's actually working out pretty good. It's going to be, let's see, 12. So it's 4 and 9/16. So we'll go 4.5 with our rip underneath the window. It'll leave a small gap. Actually, these kind of set your siding a little bit higher than 6 inches, so works out okay. Okay, so I don't want to go and put my seam right under the window. So I know if I put my first one here, I just need 2 pieces to get to the window. 12 inches is there, that's 2 pieces. And if I put this one underneath, the next one will be 2 studs away, which will be right over there, which means that this one will cross the window with no breaks underneath it. So I'll measure this one in, and we have 95.5. And then, like I said, we'll put the other seam right there. You can see it's still separated by, it'll be separated by 5 pieces again. I worked it up to the window now, and I already got it cut to length. And now I'm going to double check this. Yeah, we got 10.5, so that's exactly 4.5. Yeah, that'll work. 4.5, I can go a little smaller than that maybe. And then we got to go an 1/8 inch short here. So it's 22.5. Maybe a little bit bigger. And then I'll hook this. And we also got to add we took away an 1/8 here. We need to add an 1/8 there. So 65.25. Whoops. 65.25. So 22.5. And 65.25. And now we need to rip it at 4.5. I just got this square. It's a little bit shorter than other ones because you're missing the point on the end. But I think it's a good compromise because then you get this, and that's pretty useful. And we got these notches right here. This should get us a mark right at 4.5. I put it in there. And the grains of the Hardie won't pull around my pencil. Yep, we're right at 4.5. Got this thing cut, and it's a little bit wiggly. And there we go. And there we are. Got the piece underneath the window on. I just nailed it right there, and then I painted the nails. You can see our 1/8 inch gap there, 1/8 inch gap there, and we're ready to fill in those pieces. But first we're going to do the soffit here. And like I was saying, we're going to fill this in right here. And the way I can do this is just put it in there, make sure it's sitting nice and square. Run it down till I feel it hit the roof, that corner there, till it stops. And then I can actually measure it down. And this is probably going to be longer than 10 inches. So it's going to take a couple pieces to get up to that point. So it looks like we have 14 inches or so. And this stuff, I just eyeball it. Now I've seen people use like a metal J channel across there, and that's okay too. You can do that way. But I've just gotten in the habit of eyeballing a cut across and just kind of trimming it to get a good fit. And now I'm just sighting that it's actually lining up here, and it's staying square with the fascia. So I can see, because there's space down there and it's tight up here, I need to take off maybe another 1/2 inch up top. So I'm just going to continue to trim this until I get a good fit, and then I have to cut a little corner off the next one. Admittedly, this is pretty difficult to master. It's easier to just slap a J against the roof. Right here there wouldn't be much to nail to though. There's quite a hole there. So I just got in the habit of doing it this way, just making a nice cut and lining it up with the fascia this way. And then, so it looks like it's gonna go right into that F channel. And then I put one white nail in the trough so that it's gonna stop it from ever spinning. It's a possibility that it could pick up a little bit, but it's really not gonna happen. And now this piece actually can throw the last one off if you're not careful. But what I want to do is just run it into the roof, make sure it's clipped in right there. And now I can measure how far in it's going to go. 3 inches. So I know I got to mark back 3 inches, and then I can actually sight in the other way. If I can get it clipped in here. I can sight into that corner where I think it's gonna bump it. And it looks like it's gonna hit right there, about. Now I can just connect the dots from there to there. This stuff is pretty tricky to snip. You probably saw me snip across the ribs on the last one, and that actually deforms the piece quite a bit. So as I straightened out my snips, I walk the snips around those ribs like you just saw me doing there. And I think that whole thing is looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and nail it. Yeah. I like it. The other thing about using not using J-channel on the bottom there is that you can actually get your snips, or you can get the piece a lot closer to the roof than a J-channel, because a J-channel is gonna get messed up by all the steps and the shingles. So you can actually get it a little bit tighter looking. Another thing I forgot to mention is that this stuff, you need to let it lay. You can't force it either back, because you'll bubble it, and you don't want to pull on it too much, because you'll actually like make this right here roll in. So if you're pulling on them a lot, it's not going to look good. Even when the fascia metal's on there, it's going to actually show through. If you look up, you're going to see all these little holes underneath the back leg of the fascia metal. So you want to let it kind of sit, and I straighten it out a little bit, and for the most part just let it lay. That was some terrible nailing there. But yeah, for the most part, you just let it lay. So, yeah. Now I'm just going to continue up with that. And I'll do that side over there. And I'll be back. Now, we know this is a 12 pitch already. And now this is where this square comes in handy, which usually I would just go like this, and it mostly reaches across the whole thing. But you can also go like this, put it out of 45, and then we're reaching across the entire thing. And because we're going up a roof this way, we're going to leave the strapping band longer by, it's a 10 pitch, so it's not going to go up 3/4. So I'm kind of just guessing on that it's going to be maybe about 5/8 or so. And I'm also just sighting back there. I have to kind of sight in with the square. So I don't know why I only made 2 marks here. This got to get traced across, and this will have to get traced across as well. I think that this is the one that I'll have to use my my knife. Or is it the other side? No, it's the other side. Now, just like I was saying, it goes up a roof, so this has to get cut at an angle. And that's about right there, I think. And I mean, there's probably a way to figure out what angle that is, but because it's going down this way and that way, it's kind of just, to me, it's just a guess. Or like I said, maybe it is a 40-degree angle, maybe. That should go all tight to the roof now. We're pretty close. Might have to do a little trimming. But if I have to trim it, I'm not going to show that. Just in the effort to make it a little bit shorter of a video here. And sometimes what can happen is there'll be nails underneath the drip edge that the edgier metal catches on. And it's kind of just done a little bit by feel. If you feel it hanging up on something, you might have to try to skip over any nails that it's might be hanging up on. There it is. It's in, and it's all looking pretty good, actually. And they stopped their drip edge way short, so I don't even know it's nothing to do with me. So they can come back and add more on their drip edge. I'm not going to stop my metal that short. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'll have to maybe take a little off right there, so this will go a little tighter. So I did a little bit of trimming, and it's a little tighter now. And I'm going to go ahead and nail it. Somebody mentioned before using screws, which would be a good option rather than nails. Probably hold a little better, but I haven't had an issue with nails. And really, part of the reason why I haven't had an issue is because I make sure to nail my seams, because that's where the wind likes to catch, is the seams. And let's see, I'm just feeling where the bottom of that 2x6 is underneath there, so I don't want to accidentally nail into a void. So I think if I go up there, I'll be into some solid nailing. You don't want to overdrive those nails. You want to just barely snug them up. And the back of these nail heads are generally a little bit tapered, so if you try go too tight, it doesn't really work out. It starts to dimple it up. So there it is. Got one piece on, and we'll go get the other side on. Okay, now this is the side I have to mark, because the way these snips are designed, they're righty snips. If I had lefty snips with the top over here and the bottom over there, then I could turn that corner. But if I try turn this corner with these snips, it's going to make a big old dent right here. And it's going to fold this part out. So what I need to do is snip along there, and then snip on this line here. Okay, so it helps to get rid of some of that excess material. You just make a couple snips there, fold that up, and then snip up to where this is going to hit there, and it'll make that snip along the back a lot easier. You can take out little pieces at a time. And now this is the one that like I said, I have to knife. So just one good clean score, and then gently fold it. You let it roll a little bit, and then it'll follow that line, and it breaks away. And now we're gonna continue this cut. And that should do it. So now you know how to make that cut. You know, there's certain things that you have to knife. Now I'm on to the F channel to go up to the peak. I'm just gonna snip off this bottom leg a little, just to keep things a little tighter and to cover up any green if the soffit happens to have a hole right there. And I'll just butt it against that one. And we'll make little marks. And generally I cut the tops shorter than the bottom. That way I don't make a hole on the bottom leg. I think this will be long enough for the top. Go on the left side there. And need to sneak it behind that soffit there. And we're looking good. Yeah, I can't quite reach this side, so I'll save that for later, up top there. Okay, so now we're moving on to finishing the siding, since we got that all set. And I want to keep factory ends on the side of the window. I don't have to paint them then, and it'll be a nicer cut. So this is a 12 pitch, as we already know. And so we're going to lose 6 inches per piece. It's 62 inches. And generally what I do is I cut all one side, and then I'm able to use the scrap for the other side. So I have to cut it up from the bottom, all the pieces, and then I'm able to do the opposite side. Generally, things have been a little bigger. I could actually get 2 out of 1 already, but the other side, the 62 will work out as well. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Usually it's a bit longer. Between there and there, it's like 10 feet or something. At least on this house it has been. But since it's so short, it's only like 62 inches. I'll be able to cut both sides out of the first piece. And I won't have a buildup of scraps. My middle piece will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'll be able to utilize those someplace else. So now it's just 62 minus 6, which would be 56. Kind of wishing I had a drill. Sometimes it's weird. It decides to cut a lot faster sometimes. Haven't quite figured out the trick yet. And I have plenty of scrap, so not too worried about wasting one or so. And then again, actually not again. Easiest way to put these in, I've found, is just angle it and then just drop it in and push it, slide it in. Yeah, this one's a bit shorter than I wanted it to be, so I'll add a little to the next one. Again, 3.5 inches is covering by a lot, so this is there just for moral support and actual support. See how this one turned out. Yeah, it's a little small as well. I can easily add an inch. You can see just how wiggly a 2x4 on the flat is. Yep, so I'm just going to do that to the top of the window and check the top of the window. Once I get a little closer, maybe here, I'll start checking the top of the window just to make sure that it's not going to taper over the top of the window. It's strange, this thing does a lot of hammering sometimes, and sometimes it just cuts really smooth. Kind of run out of places to put things. Alright, so I'm going to shut this off until I get to the top. Made it up here. And I got one side of the F channel nailed. And this one, I can just cut like this. Sort of, kind of. Let it overlap a little more too. And again, just marking in line with that, where I think that bottom leg is, and if I gotta do a little trimming, that's what I gotta do. Perfect. It's real nice when I get these points together just like that, because then when I measure my freeze board, I can just hook that. It's actually going to tip a little, ever so slightly. The freeze board is going to tip, and I'm going to put it on top of that F channel so it's butting straight against that soffit. But right now I'm going to get the soffit in, and I'll get the siding up. Okay, we made it to the top here. So we got all the soffit on, and I've seen people use a double metal J channel in there, but you just end up with way more joints. So I think it looks better if you keep the soffit just continuous. We have 4.5 and 4 3/8. And in a different video, I actually bent it right there and turned the corner. I don't know if I like that method for this soffit. I think just cutting it square is probably a better idea, because that bottom, the other leg just gets messed up and hooked on the other soffit, or just if it lands in the wrong spot, it just doesn't turn out very good. They end up interfering with each other. Ugh. Right there. And now I'm going to drill a little hole so this doesn't crack when I nail it. Right there. Hopefully I didn't mess up my camera too much. And I'm going to sneak a nail in right there. I'm just holding up back there while I'm doing that, in case it wants to move around. And then we'll put another nail right there. And that doesn't have to get pounded all the way in. And now this one's going to butt against that one. That way you just have one seam right there. So 4 1/4-ish, 4 1/8-ish. So against the wall, 4 1/4 to about 4 1/8. And as long as you get 2 nails in this, it's not going to be able to twist and open up much of a gap there in the peak. Every once in a while today there's just a wicked gust. It's weird. Nothing, and then just whoosh. And it sounds just like that, I promise. Being sarcastic. Making fun of my own sound effects. Okay. So again, just holding it up tight while I'm putting this nail in. And there you have it. So yeah, you can see there's just that one line right there, and I think that looks pretty good. instead of having J channel, and then where they come together, it'd be 3 lines instead of just 1. And again, I'm just using a little piece of Hardie as a shim. You're supposed to have a 1/4 inch gap above windows and doors and stuff. So just use that as a shim, and it's 5/16, so it's a little big. 11 3/8. So that would be a 5 3/8. Oops. 5 3/8 cut. And we'll check this side, it should be the same. Yep. So that'll work all the way across. 5 3/8, and I already have this measurement, which is 26.5. And then from there I need to go 42 3/4. And the overall was 95.5. So actually the good thing about the way I did this is I wasn't even thinking about this, but the scrap piece grew the same as, because I took away there, and I took away there on one piece, it grew the same as it's gonna shrink going up here. So once I use the folds that I need to get to there, to that piece, then they'll all work the rest of the way up. That might have been pretty convoluted, but I think maybe you guys get the point of what I'm trying to say. So 95.5. And then from there it was 26.5. I could have measured from either end, it wouldn't have mattered. So there's a 26.5, and then from there it was 42 3/4. Right there. Make sure that's in, and I'm marking to this outer edge of it. There it is. $45, and then it was up 5 3/8. Now these kind of pieces can be really difficult to handle. I'm actually going to mark it at 5 1/4 and then just cut 1/8 inch off my mark, because I can get a more accurate mark by putting my pencil in that little slot there. Don't want to go past this. Okay, I'll come back when it's cut. So this one goes over top of the window, and that means it needs to get painted. So we're gonna go ahead and paint this thing. And not sure which videos I'm gonna post, but I might be saying this again. I kind of just, paint this like so, and I'm trying to get every little bit painted, but not go onto the face. And I'm gonna puddle up a little puddle in the corner here, and then push it into that corner so it gets nice and painted. So that's how I get the corner there. And like I said in the previous video, this thing has a little button that you push to get the paint to come out, kind of like a ballpoint pen a little bit. I don't know what to compare it to really. But you can actually see the button now because the felt's all gone. And I'm trying not to get paint on the piece below that nail line, because it could be a slightly different shade or sheen. So I try to avoid getting paint on the face of these. So I'm wiping it away from the face. And now it's time to put this thing up. Being very careful not to flex it too much or break the thing. I don't want to make it again. There we go. Get my 1/8 inch gap there. You can see I have a 1/4 inch at the top. And you want to slide the piece up a little bit when you're setting the gauge, if you have it already on the wall. That way you know you're setting the gauge right to the bottom there. And that's looking good. Nail it. I'll go over here where I have the spacer. Double checking. There. All right, well, there's plenty of nails in that one. And a lot of them are into studs where I could get the studs. And 83 is the next one. I already measured that out. Looks like I could add a little to it, so I'll go 84. See how it works. And we'll see if our scraps might already work. So, go right on that corner. 77. Not yet. Kind of running out of real estate here. So we got 84, and we're going to minus 12 every time because we're losing 6 inches on each side. So 84, well, that's 7 foot, so then it's going to be 6 foot. Yep, so the rest will be out of scraps. So as much as you can, you try to mark, cut, and that's a bit faster. If you can do things, I don't know, kind of like a factory or whatever you want to say. I switched this thing around a little bit more comfortable like that, but seems like it's cutting slower for some reason. I think I'm using it differently somehow. Haven't quite figured out how I'm using it differently, but maybe I will eventually. There it is. And now I just gotta continue on with that all the way to the top. So I'll be back when I'm at the top. Okay, as I was saying, you know, if you can do multiple marks at a time, that's your best bet. And what you might have noticed there is I had both of my gauges up. That's not a good idea. You're better off just putting one up, and you can rest it on there and then move the other one up when it's up. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm doing differently, but for some reason I seem to be getting a faster cut with it upside down. But this kind of digs into my hand, so my arm, so I don't like it. And as I was saying, now I can just set one side over there. I have the other side down, and now I can just slide it up and over and then get this one in. A little snug, but it'll be okay. I have to start taking a little bit off of them, I think. Yeah, I'll take some off of that one. Last two pieces, and then we're going to do the fascia metal. Right there. And this one I'm going to add a couple where I know the 1x4 is going to cover it up. Makes it a little harder to put the gauges in underneath. Of course, I was hitting the soffit there, so that didn't help. And I could have just measured this one in, but whatever. You can see I got them all around my bags there. And that's that for the siding. Now I just gotta, like I said, do the fascia. Fascia metal. And again, I'm gonna face it away from the traffic area. So I'm gonna put this one underneath that one over there. $92. I go with you know, inch or so overlap. And we're butting against that soffit. This side will be 93. That's why you check both sides, because sometimes it's a little different. And that was 92 right there. And we're gonna do some tabs on this one. Just like right there. This thing, the lead is really short now. It's just not working so splendidly. Alright, so I'm going to go square down with this upper mark here, and I'm just going to make 2 cuts so I don't have to bend the side, the metal so much. Just straight up to the other cut. Get rid of the excess there. And it's a little easier to cut this direction, I think. Now I'm going to leave an inch tab on this bottom here. And I'm just snip straight up to that little mark we made there. Get rid of that. And now I gotta flip it the other way. Snipping along this edge there and along this edge here. And now what I got in the habit of doing is actually making this tab a little bit tapered, that way it doesn't stick out beyond the other metal. And this one goes down like that. So this will cover up any imperfections in the other cut. And it also makes it watertight. Gently working it in there. Don't want to force it. Because if you start to force it, you're going to crease it. And right there it was hooked on the drip edge. And I got it on the right side now. So I'm just sliding it up until I feel it hit that soffit. And right there, that's going to be perfect. You can see it's right in line right here and in line with that. Just like I've been saying, I nail the end of the piece, the face nail, and I try to get it under the shadow bend, that way it's less visible. That way the wind can't catch this end and wiggle it and then work the whole piece free. Now this piece, I'm going to mark the whole thing because I'm going to snip this just like that. And again, this is the same as the bottom actually over there, and we had to knife this. So we have to knife this one right here because we can't get our snips on it without bending this side here the wrong way. I've seen people snip around that corner and it looks really bad. And all you need to do is knife that. You can see we relieved it there and relieved it there. Now you just bend it back and forth until it comes apart. And this ended up a wee bit long. It'll probably be okay, but I'll trim it. There we go. And a lot of times they'll round their drip edge at the top. So you end up having to snip this point off just like this, because it'll contact that point up there. I don't think it was the case this time, but it doesn't hurt to have that snipped shorter. Yeah, it's looking good. And again, one nail in on the seam there. That's it for that one. We'll nail it off the rest of the way when you guys aren't looking. So now I'm on to the 1x4 that's going to cover up this whole ugly edge. And this is like the most difficult part of the whole process. It'd be really nice to have two people. So like I said, I can hook my tape right there. And now I got to get down there and get on a ladder and measure all the way down to the bottom. So I'm just going to let my tape go, and I'll get it when I'm down low. I'm up on a ladder now, and I think I don't quite want to go right in line with this. I want to go maybe a 1/4 inch down or a 1/2 inch down, just so you don't see this hole when you look up from underneath. So I'm gonna made a mark and in plane with this bottom here, and then I'm gonna measure a little past it. We have 88 1/4. So if I go 88 7/8, I think that'll be good. It'll put me, it's 5/8 past the mark. 88, 188 7/8. So we went 5/8 past, so we'll do the same on the other side. And that's not coming out, so I'll have to climb up there again to switch it to the other side. Like I said, this is about the hardest part of all this, because it's a long piece. Once again, we're going to go 5/8 past. This one's a little easier to sight in. Picture might be getting kind of grainy for you guys. We got 187 and 5/8. 187 and 5/8 plus 5/8. 87 and 5/8. 5/8. What's that, a quarter? 188 and a quarter. Would be helpful if I remembered the other side, but oh well. We'll get them cut. Apologize for the lighting, guys. When I get rich someday, I'm gonna buy a light so I can shine some light on the situation. It's getting a little bit dark out. So I'm going on top of that F channel. And again, this is kind of done by feel. Just seeing if it's pushing up on that soffit right there. And I'm going just below that rib. I don't want to go in the middle because it's going to draw that piece in a lot. And I'm just going to get started. Get a couple screws started. I'm going 2 apart, so I'm going to go there in this one. And we'll see how I did up here. Looks like it's pretty close. I might have went a little bit too far up. It does seem to be pushing the soffit up a little. But we'll get it all tacked on there and see how it looks with the other one there too. You guys, I'll show you in a minute what it looks like, because it'll be tomorrow morning for you guys. And let's see. Oh, okay, so this is left side. But I got it facing the wrong way. I'll show you how it came together tomorrow. And again, kind of done by feel. And trying to match the screw pattern from the other side. Yeah, this side could go down a smidge. Alright, so I'm going to do some adjusting, and then I'm going to continue screwing this off every 2 boards. That ends up being every 16 inches. And then I'll show you in a second what it looks like in the morning. So 1, 2, 3, we are all done. And I will show you from the ground what it looks like. As promised, there it is from the ground. Only thing that's left is to caulk the window in, but you can't tell from down here.